Okay, thanks everyone. Sorry, we have to sort out some things setting up. Thanks for coming. Today we have Nikko talking about data management systems in agriculture in the Philippines. So it should be a refreshing topic. Russ sent his apology because he's giving a presentation to the South Australia Grains Industry Trust, so he cannot be here. But first off, thank you. The forum is yours.
Thanks, Dr. Kelty. So good morning, everyone, and thank you for your time being here. So I'm going to present my PhD project today, and hopefully I'm be very grateful later on to get some feedback in terms of how I can improve this one. So the title of my PhD project is Increasing the Adoption of Data Management Systems Among Food Manufacturing Firms in the Philippines, and my primary supervisor is Faye, and then the co-supervisor is me. So just a quick background or sort of motivation why I'm starting this kind of research. Of course, in today's world, like we have a modern abundance of digital data from many different sources. So one of which smartphones that you're using. We do a lot of things on the web. In different sectors, there's applications of Internet of Things, and we utilize a lot of sensors which are connected to gateways, and you can do some monitoring based on that. Corporations, different companies, businesses, they also use an enterprise resource planning softwares. So ERPs, they help in automating day-to-day activities of firms, and it's usually using a common database for different usage for different companies. And there are also like lots of cloud computing services available out there. So the cloud computing services, they have 3 banner services, including infrastructure, platform, and analytics as a service. So this makes it easier for an enterprise, for a company to actually avail of these different kinds of services. And in the process, we are actually creating more data than ever. So this is showing you the data in terms of the volume of information and data created, captured, and copied for the worldwide perspective. So this is in terms of data for the consumer and the enterprise data sphere. So as consumers, we consume the data, like when we're streaming, when we go to YouTube, when we do stuff on the internet. And enterprises as well, because they're into digitalization, they're also creating and using this different kinds of data. So I just highlighted here as well that in year 2020, there's actually a big increase in that usage of data because of course of the COVID-19 pandemic. And there's also a forecast there by Statistica, and their forecast, they're actually predicting that more of the data that will be created, copied, captured is coming from the enterprise data sphere. So it's mostly from the firms utilizing data in different systems to manage data. So what can firms actually do with data? So there's usually 3 different types of business analytics that they can do. That's descriptive, predictive, and prescriptive analytics. So in descriptive analytics, they usually just use the data to come up with a well-defined business problems and opportunities. So it's really more of understanding the business operations by looking at the data, because of course the data would apply, and you can understand better how the processes, the activities in the company are doing based on the data that's being collected. And then for predictive analytics, this is more of coming up with accurate projections of the future state. So basically telling the company what will happen and why will it happen in terms of different operations. And lastly, the prescriptive analytics, which is more of optimization, simulation, looking at the best possible decisions for transactions. So in agribusiness, one of its applications of data or utilizing data would be in smart farming or precision agriculture. So there's also different types of smart farming. So one is the open field cultivation in terms of livestock production, in terms of climate monitoring and optimization. So a common thing for these ones is that in the picture, it's clear like we're utilizing sensors. So the sensors are in Internet of Things, they're usually connected to a gateway, and which is the data or the information has been relayed to a cloud server, and that's where you can monitor how things are going. You can look at the data on your computer or on your mobile phones. So in agribusiness in general, this is also an interesting thing. Like why do we actually need more data in agribusiness? So in agribusiness, or if we talk about the value chains, so there are different value chain actors for performing different value chain functions from input provision, to production, to processing, distribution, and in consumption. So for different stakeholders, different actors, or different functions, there are different ways to utilize data, as can be seen in this diagram prepared by Pope. So at the input provision level, because of green, there is genetics, robotics, information, and nanotechnology. So it's also utilizing data. So we can have a more sophisticated technology and more advice in terms how we do processes under input provision. For production, for farmers or farm-related enterprises, obviously there's precision farming, so they can have better control of their farm operations because of utilizing data. And then for food processors, they can come up with product development, new innovations, even in the service component process, upgrading innovations. And at the consumer level, they could be this could be in terms of consumer decision support system, or what could actually help them in terms of making better choices with regards to their purchases. So what's making this possible for firms? So if you have all those data created from many different sources, you usually need something like a system, technology, or a resource that would be used in terms of managing the data. So we refer to data management system as any system, a resource, technology that would allow business to manage their data. And in terms of managing data, if there's a value chain for products, there's also like a value chain for data. And business layers of that value chain for data, usually it starts here. You have a way, a technology, or a resource to capture and store the data. And then the data captured or stored in a particular database, in a database management system, it's usually being processed into something. And then the third one there is data integration. So from
you can hide that thing.
Yeah, so the third one is data integration. So this is also a big problem, challenge for many companies utilizing data, because you are trying to integrate data from different sources, and the data has usually different types. So the challenge of data interoperability, like trying to make sense out of the data from different sources, so that's also a big problem or a challenge. And then lastly, of course, what the companies want is having a data analytics, but now we have clever softwares for analytics also being introduced, are machine learning and AI. So this is showing you the architecture of a data management system. So a data management system allows you to perform this different function, but it doesn't necessarily have to, when you have a technology related to managing data, it doesn't have to be like catering all of this data value chain functions. Like some technologies are limited just to capturing the data and processing it to some form. Then later on, when they feel like they have a need for the data, they employ other resources, technologies that allow them to integrate or analyze data, or from external provider as well. So usually in a data management system, there's a database management system. So the common types are MySQL, Microsoft Access, Microsoft SQL, and all of these things. And there are also different databases that are being managed by this database management system. So the most common one is the relational database. So within a data management system, you would also have data lakes. So this is like your storage, mostly for unstructured data, because you want to capture the data as they are being created. The data warehouses is more of already the structured data into a particular type. And of course, we want to have data analytics technologies or resources for this particular matter. So as an example, these companies, famous companies, they are using like enterprise resource planning for their businesses. So Amazon, they use the system analysis and program development, for SAP. It's a highly integrated system already, covering all aspects or what they do in the company. Starbucks, they use Oracle ERP. Toyota, they use Microsoft Dynamics 365, which is also an enterprise resource planning. So in summary, there's a lot of abundant data available out there from many different sources. There's also a way for us to manage those data. And what we're trying to say here is, because of this amount of data, there must be some sense, there must be some value out of this one. And with a system that's able to manage the data storage, the data processing, data integration, and analytics, there could be a lot of opportunities for improvement. And for agribusiness companies, or companies, businesses in general, the opportunities would be in terms of improving business operations. And this is at the firm and supply chain level as well, because when there's many data created by stakeholders, of course, there's an opportunity to interchange or make use of this data, not just the data of one company, but also utilizing other data from different sources. So that's the context of utilizing data and data management systems. And there are evidences from the literature regarding the adoption of these different technologies and resources for data management system. But most that you can find in the literature are actually related to a specific technology, which is using a data management system. So mostly in precision agriculture, digital farm management, AI systems, ICT adoption, smart farming technologies. And in other sectors, this is proliferating as well. So there are applications of this in healthcare, in banking and finance, in accounting, in educational institutions, local government organizations, supply chain management systems, and small and medium enterprises. So from that, like overall the usage and adoption of data management resources and technologies, let's now look at the Philippine context. So in the Philippines, the Department of Agriculture, since 2016, they made a roadmap of how we can improve the Philippine agriculture. So they have already identified digital agriculture as a key strategy to transform our PH agriculture. So this has started in 2016, but this is not really apparent in terms of what the DA is doing at this point. So the MSMEs, the small, medium enterprises in the Philippines, based on a recent study, the overall knowledge and acquisition of smart manufacturing technologies are actually poor. So there's very limited studies on adoption related to data management technologies and resources. Only this I can find in the Philippines. And another one is only 30% of MSMEs have information technology infrastructure. And this has started only because of the COVID-19 pandemic, because a lot of the organizations, government institutions were mandated to digitize most of their transactions. So that's from Acopiado et al. Actually, John Marks here is also a co-author of this publication. So somehow there's a perceived low adoption of DMS-related technology. So this is not consistent with what the Department of Agriculture actually wants. So this is somehow the focal research question stemming from that particular problem that I want to explore and understand better. So how do we actually increase the adoption of data management system among food manufacturing firms in the Philippines? So I want to answer this one from a knowledge perspective and a policy perspective as well. So to understand better or to answer that question, there are also a number of issues that need to be clarified. So the first one is in terms of adoption. So if you look at the literature in terms of what would be the factors affecting the adoption of particular, so it's not specific to data management system, but it's more of general of IT infrastructures. So there's two famous models for technology adoption, which is applied at the organizational level. So there's a number of adoption theories out there, but these two here, the technology acceptance model by Davis and the technology organization environment framework by Tomatsky and Fraser, this is the most famous ones in terms of application at the organizational level, because I'm looking at the firms as the unit of analysis. So for technology acceptance model, is mostly looking at the perceived ease of use of a particular technology and their usefulness, and these factors are affecting the adoption of data management systems. For technology organization environment, from the name itself, TOE, so basically looking at the technology. By technology, this means the characteristic of a particular technology. So the characteristic, it has to be clear for a particular adopter, like what are the characteristics of this technology. Organization is in terms of mostly firm-specific characteristics, like their industry size, assets, and all those things. And the environment is like the external forces of the firm, particularly including government regulations, for example, which may affect also, like there's a policy with the DA, and also some programs trying to promote digital agriculture. Another key issue here is in terms of impact. So there's also a big issue regarding data. So we're calling it data deluge, because there's many sources of data. We're creating data more than ever. Somehow, some firms are getting overwhelmed with the data, so they don't know how to handle data, or they can actually make sense out of the data available. So this is also a question, like from this notion here that this data is the way to manage the data, and there's our opportunities, but does it actually lead to somehow beneficial impact So there's a supporting theory for this one. This one is called the resource-based theory, or the resource-based view famously by Barney. So this RBV theory holds that resources, they vary across firms, and differences in the resource levels, this will enable the firms to actually attain sustained competitive advantage. So what we're looking at here are the resources of the firms and their capabilities. This could affect, or this would allow them to gain competitive advantage. And by resources, following the RBV theory, it should be heterogeneous, immobile, valuable, rare, inimitable, or non-substitutable. So the VRIN, it's like a famous concept for organizations. So the critical question here is, how does the adoption of the data management system or any resources, technologies related to that can actually affect the firm capabilities and performance? So by capabilities, this is usually related to what firms can do with data. So earlier I said that it's important for stakeholders in the supply chain to actually exchange their data. So the two critical capabilities here because of KMS is, number one is the information sharing, and the second one is the chain collaboration. So if you have that data, you have a way to manage data. Are you going to these capabilities of the firm going to be something that the firm should be increasing in terms of their transaction? The other one is, we're also not sure if there's, of course, there's an impact for that one, but how does this particular use of the data management system actually become a source of sustained competitive advantage? So based on this RBV theory, if you look at the literature, since the use of data and this data management systems are new, so it hasn't been explored from perspective or resource-based view, if the use of data and data management systems is actually going to be a strategic resource that would allow the firms to gain competitive advantage. So that's one. And then lastly is in terms of preference. So there are also a number of issues related to the use of IT infrastructure, particularly with regards to exchanging information, or in this case, for data management technologies and resources. So there are a lot of issues, particularly number one is the scalability. So if you have a system there, how scalable is the system? So businesses, they grow, depending on the businesses, they grow probably exponentially. So if they're going to use a particular system, is it able to handle increases in the number of operations, the number of users, numbers of activities? The second one, which is quite very famous and critical, which is about data security and privacy. So I think last week you heard about the data breach in Optus. So about 10 million users of Optus, their consumer data were actually compromised. So that's also a big issue. So for some, it's for some people, enterprises who are going to use a system, they're also pretty much concerned about the data privacy and the security of the data that is being put up out there in the system. The third one, there's also some issue regarding the willingness to share. This study is specific to farm data. This is farmers' perspective in terms of how willing they are to share data. So even if they're able to produce, capture, store that data, are they willing to actually share it to gain some benefits or not? And then this last part is, I talked to some companies about their operations regarding how they handle data. One of the things they're looking at is data management capabilities. So if there's a system, is it allowing them to actually do all those four things that I mentioned earlier? The ability to capture and store the data, to process it, to integrate the data, and come up with clever analytics. So this is pretty much a big issue that they want to see. So going back to that focal research question, now we increase the adoption of data management system among food manufacturing firms in the Philippines. I chose food manufacturing firms because they're more inclined to actually using DMS because of their strategic position in the supply chain. So they're more likely to have adopted a data management system. They're more likely to work with other stakeholders in the chain in terms of data exchange and analytics. So based on those, on that focal question and those key issues I've mentioned, these are the research objectives I want to do. The first one is I want to identify and analyze the factors affecting the adoption of data management system among food manufacturing firms in the Philippines. The second one is I want to analyze the impacts of data management systems on firm capabilities and performance. The third one is I want to explore how the use of data management system can become a source of competitive advantage based on a resource-based view perspective. And number four, I want to identify and analyze the preferences of food manufacturing firms for data management systems. So these are mainly the 4 objectives and will mainly form the basis of writing the papers later on. So this is showing you the summary of objectives and methods that I'm going to employ for my research project. So for objective 1, which is identifying, analyzing the factors of factors for adopting data management systems, I'll be looking at these variables mainly from the technology acceptance models, the model and technology, organization environment models, specific firm characteristics, and also the owner-manager characteristics. And then I'm going to use ordinal regression for data analysis. And then for objective 2 and 3, going for objective 2 specifically, I'll be looking at how the adoption of DMS is going to affect directly the firm performance, and also these 2 firm capabilities here, the information sharing and chain collaboration. And then for objective 3, this is more of coming from the in-depth interviews. So really exploring if the firms are considering the data management system as a valuable resource or a strategic resource that can be a source of sustained competitive advantage. And for objective 4, this will be examining the preference for data management systems. So this is using a discrete choice experiment. So the data will be mainly coming from a survey. So for the survey data, I will use the data for objective 1, 2, and 4. And from the in-depth interviews, I will be using that data, qualitative data analysis for objective 3. And hopefully directly from a knowledge and policy perspective, having findings for all these research will help in terms of increasing adoption of data management systems. So for the data collection, I'll be doing a survey among 320 food manufacturing firms across 6 key regions in the Philippines. The 6 key regions is based on their the GDP contribution of agribusiness of these different regions. I'll be doing a stratified random sampling, and for the in-depth interviews, I'm targeting at least 20 key informant interviews, but this is for food manufacturing firms that have fully adopted a data management system, which means that they're doing all those things from data storage, data processing, data integration, analytics, so they could give much more valuable information and appreciate how it actually affect their performance. And then I'll be using a web-based survey approach, of course, because of limitations in terms of the time and money. Hopefully, I could be able to get more sample, but I would prefer to have scheduled company visits to administer the survey in person. So across these 6 key regions. So for data analysis, the objective 1, I'll be doing ordinal regression using an ordered logic model. So these are the variables, and I'll be looking at the adoption of DMS. So I'll particularly develop an adoption index. So this is in terms of the usage of the different resources, data management resources that they're actually using in the business. So Y here is the adoption index, and X is, it's 1 if the firm adopted a specific DMS-related technology, and then we have a weight here which is assigned to a specific DMS-related technology. So the weight is in terms of how important is that particular resource, data management resource or technology, in terms of you're getting benefits out of the whole system. And then using a set of intervals, I'll be categorizing those different manufacturing firms from no adoption, less adopted, moderately adopted, highly adopted, and fully adopted. So this is in an ordinal fashion. The objective 2 is utilizing a partially square structural equation modeling. So this is more, I use PLS because it's more of a theory development as opposed to covariance-based structural equation modeling. So I'll be looking at the data management system, how it's going to affect, again, the firm capabilities, the 2 I mentioned earlier about information sharing and chain collaboration, then how the data management system can directly affect firm performance, and of course, indirectly through the improvements in firm capabilities. So this is the conceptual model I built based on a literature review. For objective 3, this is mainly utilizing a content and thematic analysis. So I'll be examining the data from the in-depth interviews, identifying some coding units, some similar themes and patterns. So I'm going to categorize them into themes and or categories, then summarize the data in a frequency table. So the themes that I will basically have to explore following the resource-based view is the VRIN of data management. So again, the VRIN stands for if the data management system is for the company, if they view it as something that is valuable, rare, inimitable, and not substitutable. And of course, in the interviews, it has to emanate, like I need to find some evidence that the data management system is actually valuable, rare, inimitable, and non-substitutable for the company. And lastly, for objective 4, this is through a discrete choice experiment. So since data management system as a whole is pretty much generic, so it's pretty much hard to identify some attributes and attribute levels for it as well. So I came up with this using a rapid assessment of the available systems that are offered by providers in the market, and from key informant interviews with software developers as well. So we have 5 attributes here. The first one is the pricing structure, which is pretty much a big thing as well in the Philippines. So I did some consumer studies in the Philippines. Most of them are like really very price and appearance sensitive. So for the pricing structure, we have 3 levels. So it's a tiered model. So you have a different pricing depending on the tier where the customer belongs. So you can have like an individual or a business account or something like that. Pay per user depends on how many users are using the system, and then a one-time license. So it's like a one-time payment. The second one, scalability. Recall later there was an issue regarding scalability. So how scalable are the systems that are going to, how scalable are the systems will be? So this is in terms of the number of users, transactions, operations that the system can handle. So by the way, the system is like for those commercialized system available for data management. So the scalability would be ranging from low, medium to high. In terms of the third attribute, this is in terms of capability. So the capability of that system to handle different data management activities. So from data storage, data processing, data integration, and data analytics. So it could be ranging from that the minimum, like a particular system can handle data storage and processing, but some systems can handle more of that, like also integration and analytics. For hosting, this is I'm not sure in the context like for developed countries, but in the Philippines, this is something that is important, particularly because of issues on data privacy security. So by hosting is like when you have the system, is it going to be hosted on cloud or on premise? So by on premise it's basically having a physical infrastructure within your own companies. All the servers are there. And for data security, it has 3 levels ranging from low, medium, high. So for low, it's just having a basic authentication. There's no encryption, and then it's high vulnerability in terms of external attacks. For medium level security, you have an advanced authentication with encryption support, and there's a medium vulnerability for external attacks. And for high, there's a multi-factor authentication with advanced encryption and this very low vulnerability to external attacks. And based on this one, I'll be using a conditional logic regression model. So my interest here is to estimate the preference weights and conditional relative importance of the DMS attributes that I was explaining earlier. Yeah, so that ends my presentation, and thank you very much for your attention.
I think you have. Thank you. You have some questions online. So there was a question from Steve. Okay, so I will just leave them here. So that's very interesting topic. Lots of things. I am not sure how complex the project is. It looks very complex. You are talking about different data management systems, but at the end of the day, there is going to be certain major types, right?
Yep.
So if you think of the software we use, it's either Microsoft Office or something, and if you go to database, it's going to be certain types, and those have got certain features. These are fixed, right?
Yep. So the whole data management, it's actually like a combination for the architecture. It's actually a combination of different technologies and resources. So there could be a different technology or resource that can be used in terms of, for example, for data capture and storage. So you might use an RFID technology for that one. But in terms of the other data management practice, like in terms of data integration analytics, you might want to use another type of technology. So it could be within the same system, or it could be like a combination of different resources and technologies.
So my question is, that is possible, but on the ground, things could be a lot simpler. So if you go across the entire sector, there might not be much variety. Like if you think of database systems, I mean, there is going to be certain types of software. It's all commercial, and they are going to come in packaged forms. Maybe a company has in-house stuff, or maybe it outsources. And you were talking about being on the cloud or somewhere else. Is that really important for what you do? So I thought maybe there is too many dimensions that you are imagining, whereas on the ground things are just a lot simpler. So and also your objectives seem to be too many. This is just general comment. I think let's see.
I agree with the Tackle's comment. I'm not sure what. So you imagine, say, a rice processor. What information do they need? Well, they might need to know prices. They might need to know something about the supply chain. So you could actually make it quite simple, and then just ask that business, how do you value this information? What could be better? I mean, you're going very, very broad, and usually a PhD involves starting broad and then realising you can't solve all the problems. So then you narrow it down and perhaps just look at the sector of business and a certain type of data. It could be consumer intelligence, or it could be price data. It could be supply data. What's the yield going to be this year?
Yes. So, do you have any evidence that adopting DMS actually improves the profitability of Philippine agribusiness firms?
At this point, no. I also tried to look at some of the literature. Like in the Philippines, the adoption of DMS-related technologies, there's no existing studies that's very specific to that.
Then you need to change your objectives. Because your objectives are stated. The objective is to increase the adoption of DMS, and at the end of that, your big flow diagram, your outcome was going to be to increase the adoption. It's perfectly possible that actually the outcome of this is to say they're not using it for very good reasons. It's not profitable given the prices that Microsoft are charging for the system. So I think you just need to change the framing of this about understanding profitability of adoption and what are the constraints and opportunities. At the moment, it looks like you've decided already that it's they're not adopting, they're making a mistake. Whereas,
That was very similar to my comment in thinking about adoption. I mean, you've got the technology acceptance model and another one there. But my suggestion was going to be, well, you need to think about it more broadly in terms of the economics of it. So I'd try and embed those within a broader, but still quite simple economic sort of mindset. What are the benefits? How do they stack up against the costs and the risks of adopting it? How does that unfold over time? And all that happens possibly subject to some constraints on resources or capabilities. Right? So that's a very standard, very simple sort of economic way of thinking about it. And I'd probably, I agree with Michael, I'd start with that. And then when you get to if you proceed with that first objective, I then frame and think about what issues, what data you need, and so within that sort of framing of it. By all means, embed those other ones within it, but I think that will be a more powerful approach.
Do you want to answer? So Steve is asking you, is this something that you can think of as a production factor?
Can data information in this context be considered as a production factors? If so, is it the same kind of different from the other production factors? So the unit of analysis for this one are the production processing firms. So these are food manufacturing firms. So most of the data that I'm going to get from them, particularly, is in terms of the different technology, data management resources and technologies that they're doing. So how they're actually doing the data capture and storage, the data processing, the data integration, and data analytics within the company. And then what sort of technologies that they are using to do that one. So mainly that one, and for the in-depth interviews, it's mostly about how they view the data management system as a resource. So whether they find it as something that is valuable, rare, inimitable, and non-substitutable, and does it actually provide benefits for them to say that it would lead to a sustained competitive advantage over time. So yeah, something like that.
And Julian is asking you, how do you make sure you don't get what's data?
With regards to data reliability, so it would normally works hand in hand with also the data source, which is mainly from if you're using a corporate database, and also the provider of the system. So this in terms of the quality of data that is being captured and stored, and also the reliability of the system that they are using in terms of processing the data and coming up with some analytics. So it's I think as of this point, they have to work hand in hand in terms of addressing data reliability.
So if you're asking them online, are you going to map out all the possible things they could do and then ask them so that it's easy for them to tell you, or are you going to ask them also like using open-ended questions where they write?
For the in-depth interviews, it's mostly the open-ended questions, but for the survey, it's like I try to arrange it like it's easier for them to actually just have some options, and they have to take their like in terms of what their data management practices are and the resources, technologies that they use.
So is the data?
Could I ask a follow-up?
Go for it.
Yeah.
Could I ask a follow-up question? The point I'm concerned with about data reliability here is that if you're looking at the impact of data management system on firm efficiency and things like ultimately firm valuation, my concern is that if the data, of course, is inaccurate, it's very likely, not certain, but very likely that the effect is actually likely to be blunted, if not actually negative. So looking at data qua data isn't necessarily, at least as far as I can see from my experience, going to be an accurate enough tool to look at the response of the firm in terms of performance. It's how that data is structured, how accurate it is, how useful it is, that's going to drive that. And so an intermediate, it seems to me anyway, some sort of intermediate measurement system needs to be put in place above and beyond quantitative measure of how much data or how many data management services and so forth are being instituted, because a lot of these firms use data already. The question is how they can do it better, I think.
So is the data you're talking about mainly internally generated data, or is it external data that's acquired? Or are you looking at both? Is it how companies manage their internal data and link their different spreadsheets or databases together? How they acquire external sort of market intelligence?
Yeah, so mainly that in terms of their internal usage of the data and the data management system, but some systems also allow them to integrate data from different sources. So for a processor perspective, it could be they're getting data as well from their input suppliers in terms for their material resource planning, for example, or they could also be utilizing data from their customers just to sync their delivery production and delivery schedule with all the many different demands of the different customers. So depends on the company actually in terms of how.
So when this becomes critical is when they're exporting, because you quite often need to have data trails that be provided to your export agents.
Well, just related to that, that's actually what we want. These 320 firms in the Philippines, it's a small country.
Yeah.
I mean, if they are small manufacturers, they are likely to be doing just payroll stuff and so on, not much else.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So what are you expecting? Like, do these companies, are there companies in the Philippines that actually have the interest for economic reasons or whatever to install complex things that need analyzing, or are they going to be mainly like dominated by payroll stuff? Okay, maybe customer management, if they use anything else, probably comes with the manufacturing equipment, so they don't have any control. What exactly are you envisaging?
To the extent of my knowledge, for the small manufacturers, food manufacturers, they usually like mostly just minimal usage of data and also use of a commercial system to manage that one. But for medium, large corporations that are doing food processing, particularly those who are involved in exportation already, they have some sort of resources that they use. So for food manufacturing companies, there's usually three. So they employ data management resources, that's one. The second one is they have planning resources, that is in terms of working with their, but this is still IT-based planning resources, so working with their input suppliers and also with the buyers. And the third one is in terms of the performance management resources. So if they are very critical in terms of following like performance management, something like principles, so they have to employ those kinds of resources in order to run like adequate analytics that they would use for the businesses. So that's mostly applicable for the medium and large. I know there are like medium and large companies in the Philippines that are doing that at the moment. And I've already listed some of the agribusiness companies in the past weeks that I was looking at, like just making sure if I could have adequate number of respondents for this one. So I've listed around 400 plus already at this point, but they're like scattered across the Philippines. So mostly in southern Philippines and in Luzon area, in northern Philippines, but in central part of the northern Philippines.
And have you been talking to these firms already?
I have already tried to also like administer the questionnaire, like just so if I'm sure if I can actually get a response from them. So
that's some of the comments that have been made, Ben's and Tagli's and even Michael's. Seems to me that a good way of starting to address those would be to start talking to the firms as soon as possible.
Yeah, actually,
maybe you want to re-sequence your planned activities and bring the interview to the front.
Yeah.
Learn from that,
yeah.
And then you can sort of modify and refine your subsequent objectives based on what you learned in that general interviews.
Oh, okay.
To find out what are they doing? Like these sort of questions that they've been asking. It's all about, well, what are they doing? What could they conceivably use this technology for? And is it even relevant for these firms? You know, it's trying to get at those sort of fundamental issues before you go too far down locking in what the other research activities are.
Makes sense.
So think of, I think this marking out is very important because save CF. Okay, any more questions?
Connecting to that, I'm interested to learn how they have automated specific decisions based on this system. There's also productivity gains, as they're referring, that comes from risk decision or probably optimization based on these monitors and dashboards that they will implement.
Yeah.
That would be interesting.
I see. Yeah. Thanks. Yeah.
Okay, online, does anyone have any more questions? Okay, that is, yeah.
Yep.
Very little question. Last question. Could you please provide me more information about how government really need to support for the farmer, also for the manufacturer, in terms of how they can, if the government set up a very good system for company to store data and also store data both of the big company and medium company and small company.
Yeah.
It will be help the farmer or company more willing to adopt that.
Yeah.
If the government has support.
Yep. So we actually had experience working with the Department of Science and Technology within our region. We actually did a study regarding the impact of COVID-19 in terms of the business operations. So the DOST specifically, they have a particular program called Set Up. So it's they're providing some grants in the form of loans, like with 0% interest to companies who are willing to innovate. They're mostly for food manufacturing companies. But the innovation that they're pursuing is mostly on product upgrading and process upgrading. So at this point, they haven't had any program related to like employing data management systems. So the firms at this point are doing it at their own perspective. So that might be one angle that it's good to look at from a policy perspective as well, because the DOST also wants to know, like, if they innovate, like which one would they actually prioritize? Would they consider like focusing first on improving their products or processes before like going into this one, or is it necessary to employ this one hand in hand with the improvement? And because if you improve your processes, that might need some, I don't know, maybe installation of some sensors or some systems to sync all those things. So yeah, that might be also a very good angle to look at.
So you interview, who are you interviewing? Those 20 interviews?
The 20 manufacturing firms, these are the ones that are mostly, I think these are the medium large corporations that have fully adopted like a data management system. So that means they have a complete set of technologies and resources intended for managing data in terms of data storage, processing, integration, and analytics. So they're the ones who can give the full information regarding its value.
But maybe you should also talk to people who are not like that to learn about
the
context for them, so that you can ask sensible questions in your other surveys and activities about what makes sense for those other smaller firms or less technologically advanced firms.
Yeah, right.
Okay, I think we can wrap it up. So thank you.
Thank you very much for all the feedback.